Hello and welcome to Bigfoot Odyssey and it's Sunday Encounters. I hope everybody's doing all right out there tonight. We've got no Kerry tonight. He's kind of got commitments. He's working. I think he might pop on for a few minutes. I'm not sure, but we have got. Oh, sorry. So co-hosting with me, of course, is Jimmy Barr. How are you doing, Jimmy?
Good, good. Glad to be here.
Good to hear it. I like how you're moving in on the mic. And of course, our guest was here last week, uh, going through 9 years of Bigfoot activity before they realised it was Bigfoot. Maggie, thank you for coming back this week.
Oh, you're welcome. Glad to be here.
Yeah, I'm glad you've come back because we went through so much stuff last week. You had a lot going on, and I just wanted to pick up on a comment that was left, or a couple of comments was left after the show of how it was kind of a bit all over the place and so much stuff in detail. But actually, you know, it's a hard place to start, isn't it? When you've got nine years of stuff going on in your life, where do you start? And I guess you have to start somewhere, and that's just the way the show went. And I followed it quite well, but I know it's not easy, is it, to just start somewhere with all the things that were happening with you?
No, it isn't actually. And I'm glad that our listeners were kind to me. And I hope that maybe with a little encouragement from both of you guys that I can answer a few questions that maybe we didn't cover last week.
Yeah, sure. Well, let's just, I mean, for those who weren't here, give us a few examples of the things you were experiencing that you've just had no idea and you're just trying to make an excuse, a reason for these things happening instead of putting, Bigfoot as the answer. You kind of messing with your heads, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was definitely messing with our head because we went out there as like camp hosts. And the forest is beautiful. It smelled like Christmas every day. We were knowing that we had a forest that had every living creature in it that any forest could have, from coyote, bear, bobcat, cougar, whatever. And we just automatically started building a catio for our cats for protection and knowing where our dogs could be and giving good guard to all of that. And we knew that we had squirrels to feed and this and that. So we started putting out different fruit and stuff that we had, were questionable for human consumption. And we would cook out on our catio because we made a nice big one, had our barbecue out there, everything protected from critters. So raccoons and things couldn't come in on anything. And we started getting this terrible smell. And I just said, well, it's cougar kill. It's just a deer. And but it kept happening too often for it to be cougar kill, and it didn't just smell like dead rotting meat. It smelled like urine, ammonia, uh, dirty, like maybe a person that hadn't taken a bath for a long, long time. And we're kind of going, woo, what's going on? And my husband questioned me, and I go, well, it's just the way that the decay is happening, and everything is okay, no problem. And we went about our business and never thought anything about anything except that we were feeding birds and squirrels. And then, as I said before, we got little trinkets on our front steps. And I am light hearted, and because I'm Irish and Indian, and I just said, oh, fairies are leaving little gifts. But we know now, thinking back on everything, how much that we were actually paralleled pretty much every day through the forest as we were on our mule, our Kubota, riding through there. And knowing that we smelled a whiff here and a whiff there, finding little logs across the road after we'd gone through there. We might come back and there'd be a log across the road that hadn't been there before. So we were constantly picking up small madrona trees and different small uh, evergreen type trees, dead things, pull them out of the road. And and I remember I was recalling to my husband after the program last week how we were down in the middle of the forest, and this forest, probably is small in comparison to, a lot of private forests, but you could cover over about, probably, if you counted all of the trails and road together, you could probably be on, you know 8 to 10 miles of road going through there. And we went off to take care of this little kind of a little outbuilding thing that was used for shelter sometimes. And we picked a nice day, picnic lunch, sitting down there, and husband's working this thing over, and we get the smell. And we were miles away from our house. We were miles away from the where the smell had been most familiar. And I did notice that there were buzzards flying over, but it still didn't have that rank, uh, like dead deer smell totally. But we just heard different things. We would hear crunching through the forest. We would have no reason for dead trees to come down, or trees to fall, or trees to be broken off. But yet, you would think some days that it sounded like there was an ice storm out there in the middle of the summer day. And, uh, you know, we just think back on it, seemed like we were having little games played with us. I remembered last night, I was kind of going over things with my husband and I said, "Do you remember that day that I came home and said, something was behind all of the salmonberry bushes down at the creek? And I thought it was a horse and a rider hiding from me down there so they wouldn't get caught, because we wouldn't allow horses to come in. And
Right.
they would try to sneak in. And I said, I think somebody was down there. I could kind of see him and feel him there. But if how we looked at it is, if people were doing what they weren't supposed to be doing, unless they were doing some kind of damage, it's like, just be peaceful and carry
Mm,
on.
yeah. Did you
So
actually think they were playing with you? Or there was a period when there was some sort of, game that they were playing with you?
we did kind of, I mean, when we thought back on our first Christmas there, and as I had said before, we had one kind of lady that grew up there. She kind of thought that she owned the whole mountain, and she'd sneaky down there and do stuff. And we thought, okay, we already had an October time with her, and this was December. Snow was on the ground, and there have been tire tracks going through there, because we would go through there in the snow. And we went through that place for an hour and a half, all dressed up for our Christmas dinner, and never did find her. Though we could hear chattering, we could hear laughter. We felt like we were being totally gamed by a neighbor. And so we left and we locked the gates on our way out. Said, okay, her rig or her Kubota or whatever will still be there when we get home. And there was nothing there. There was nobody locked behind that gate, and there was no other way to escape that. There was one way in, one way out. So that's just one of the happenings that we started putting things together little by little, but we didn't actually put it to be in a Bigfoot.
Mm.
We didn't actually put it to be in a Bigfoot until my husband found the footprint in the mud down at this pond that we weren't aware was there. And there were frogs in that pond. There were salamanders in that pond. There was everything there that, even in our bigger ponds, there was all the food that you would want to have, I guess, if you were uh, that kind of, looking for that kind of mark to eat. But we kind of pretended like, oh, but until we heard the scream and had the footprint, we weren't putting two and two together. We were just living there in harmony.
Mm-hmm.
We were just, we knew we had bears in there. We knew we had cougars in there. We weren't out to go hunt them down or look at them or bother them. And they really weren't coming up to where we were living.
Like a mutual respect, maybe, in a way.
Yeah, it was. It was just, um, we've always been people that just let our feet touch the earth and be part of the mother. And all of those woodland creatures were part of that.
Mm.
And so we didn't really try to, you can't live that far out and be the only ones right there. You're not in yelling distance for help. So why spook yourself out on what could be, should be, or, why question it?
Mm-hmm.
Just, um, there's
Go with it.
no reason to spook yourself out.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
I remembered the first night we went on. We had never been in the forest yet, and I go, "Hey, let's go for a little adventure." And now I think, my husband probably should have given me switches for Christmas that year, because we're going down this road in the dark with the headlights on. It had been dusk up above, but it was dark in the forest by the time we got down there. And I had this old fashioned big flashlight, one of those mag light things that you could make into a spotlight. That's about all we had at the time for any flashlights. And so I took that with me, and the lights just weren't really bright, and they kept flashing. And I go, "Oh, we need some high beams." And we're going down this crooked snake trail road, and I start fiddling with the light switch, and it goes off and it wouldn't come back on. And my husband's driving, and he is like, "Okay, you got to get this fixed." He was getting really nervous, and I turned on the big flashlight and flashed it at the ditch and said, "Okay, follow the bouncing ball." And we made it down there and back. And when we got back up to our house, you know, the next day we went back down and realized, that it was, we were okay. We weren't going to go off of a cliff or anything, but we realized that the beauty of the whole place, how much we should go out and explore it and see what was, actually all there, and start memorizing everything. And we pretty much did do that. But as I was speaking last week, I'm a photographer, so I would go down and I would push my camera, because I don't have a macro lens, so I would push my camera for a macro, and it would show the infrared. And then when they put the game cameras up, I kind of feel, maybe it's just way out there thought, but actually who knows, that cameras show the infrared, the game cameras do. I was
Mm.
pushing that so far that I could see it flash red in my vision finder there. And so that after that, that's when I felt like I don't know if it was mind speak, I don't know if it was a vibration, I don't know what it was, but I knew I was no longer allowed past this one point in the forest. My
Mm.
husband could go down through there, no problem at all, but I felt like there was a point where I couldn't go past that. And it was creepy. I didn't want to go past that. There were a lot of second old growth stumps in there that were tall enough, the way that they were cut off or burned off, that anything could stand behind them and be hidden
Mm-hmm.
very easy. I mean, they were probably 5 feet across, just, if you drew a measure across it.
Yeah.
So I never went past that point ever again. But my husband did, and he was never, he never felt bothered down there.
That's interesting, isn't it? The physical
Hmm.
feeling of don't go.
Don't
And
go. And another thing, we were recalling all kinds of stuff, because this dredged up, um, coming on with you guys dredged up a lot of different little memories.
Mm.
And I told him this morning also that when I was down taking some photos, I stepped off of the machine that I was riding on to get a better photograph, and I could feel something like it was at my back staring at me, all of the hair. It was just like this, you could tell you were in the company of somebody else.
Mm-hmm.
And but it didn't give me the feeling of being afraid. It gave me the feeling of I have to get out of here because I'm late for an appointment kind of feeling. It wasn't like a scared feeling. It
Mm-hmm.
was just like I better hurry along and get back up to my house feeling,
Yeah.
And so, and being so naive about it, I think that's what helped us get through nine years of it. And we think it was an accident that we even saw it.
Yeah.
We don't think it was an accident that we heard it screaming. And I saw a comment uh, on last week's show where they didn't understand what a fifth wheel was, and ours was, it is like she described, a camp trailer with a gooseneck on it. Ours was 40 feet long with 5 slides, and this scream actually made the back side of the house feel like it was like, this is so dumb, but to my mind, it still feels like it was the wind percussions or something of the wind or the voice that felt like it was nearly shaking our house.
Wow.
And it was a big, huge scream, like an elephant's lungs. What convinced us that it was real was the answer from a couple canyons away, which was really loud too. And that made us pretty much believers there. But then, like I said, we were still pinching ourselves and wondering if what we heard was real, trying to deny it, because that's kind of, I think, from things I've heard from other folks, that's kind of where you go at first. You're like, I didn't hear what I heard. That's all wrong. Carrie said, well, how could you put it to like a train or something? And I kept telling my husband, well, we're not that far from Portland, Oregon. It was probably a plane coming in from California, putting its brakes on so it could land at the airport,
Mm.
because it was such a god awful howling sound, but it didn't really sound metallic. So we were still trying to pinch that out of ourselves when we saw it a few months later.
Yeah.
And Carrie said, well, do you think they can cloak? I I don't I didn't mean it like could they camouflage themselves. It was like they we saw something that was like the predator, and that's all we could describe. When we finally got courage to tell our best friends, we said, remember the movie The Predator, and how everything was wobbly wiggly and looked like
Like
watery
oil,
kind of.
or like oil on water kind of
Yes,
effect. Yeah.
yes. And so
Yeah.
we um and it popped out into the headlights. It was coming from our neighbor's field, and it popped out into the headlights. And
In that form, in
in
that kind
its
of,
in its form, in the Bigfoot
in a
form,
Bigfoot form. Right.
and
Okay.
its eyes were like seeing your display on the on your Bigfoot Odyssey that we're looking at right now. It was oranges on the outside and darker as it went to the center. And still today, I still try to tell myself that it had to be like our headlights are going off of some reflector somewhere, or, but the thing looked at us, it turned at the waist and gave us this, like, a half a second stare that seemed like it was, a minute long. And then it turned and took, what I saw as a slip on the side of the road, on the embankment by the ditch, and then it was up in to this this wooded area in a flash. It was shaded, it was shadowed, it was, it was dark. So all these big timber there are going to make all these weird, woggly things. But we did go back the next day and we found probably, I would say, 14 or 15-inch footprints that were sunk in the mud where
Wow.
the grass was still depressed. It wasn't depressed, like flattened anymore, but it was depressed. You could see where the mud had sunk in
Mm-hmm.
because it was still, it's Oregon, it's damp all the time. So we did see the toe prints where it slid at the ditch line and 2 more footprints, and that was it. There was no more evidence of anything ever being there but that. So it kind of wonks you out when you think about what you saw. And there wasn't any smell. Of course, it was warmer. We had our windows up. It was evening, but he was he was very tall, and we keep trying not to second guess ourselves on how tall he really was, because your brain will try to add and subtract things from
Yeah.
what really happened, and we're trying to hold it accurate, go by what is noted that I have noted. And he kind of had a little bit of the look that Larry's last gal showed, where it looked like he had kind of like little kind of bangs coming down to
Oh
the
yeah.
to the brow, but
Yeah.
he had more of the rock star hair on the sides, and he did have a little bit of mutton chop on that one side, what I could see as fast as he turned and everything, but it was his eyes that were glowing, and it was almost like they were, it just, looking back on it and thinking about it, my brain's going, yeah, that was probably bigger than his whole face. But it wasn't. It was like 2 reflectors. And
This is the one, is it?
huh?
Like this is. Oh, can you see this image?
Can I see the image
Yeah.
in
Can
my
you see?
head?
No, on the screen now. Are you
Yeah.
actually?
Mm-hmm.
Is that
Yeah,
the one
he
you're
had
talking?
he had more of that kind of hair, but then as he turned, some of those bangs kind of blew off towards his temple a little bit more, because he was moving kind of fast.
Yeah.
But he looked a lot like this guy, and who knows how old they are. I mean, everybody says, well, that was little when it had to be a youth. Well,
We don't
we
know.
got we have all kinds of short people, tall people, skinny people, and all these Bigfoot images seem to all look like different.
It's
And
hard to determine, isn't it? I mean, like
mhm.
you say, we've got absolutely no idea
No, and how
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 it.
strong, how I mean, he looked really strong. He would look in my eyes as not old, more, uh say, like maybe a 30-year-old guy that had been working out at the gym.
Mm.
You could, when he turned, you could see that, I mean, he didn't have a paunch, but uh,
There could
I'm
be
trying,
clues. There
pardon
could be
me.
clues. There could be clues, couldn't they, to
Mhm.
Are you
whether as
saying he had
adults.
a dad bod? Is that what you're saying?
No, no, he didn't have a dad bod. He was missing that part. But I couldn't see a six pack. I mean, I'm not going to say, gee, he had a six pack and he had these frog leg looking nice legs. He did look good. Like his legs, the side of his leg from the hip down, that thigh, it looked strong. And the calf of his leg looked strong, and it was shorter. I mean, that lower part is shorter, so much shorter looking. But he had really long arms. He was very muscular, and he was running when he was doing this. So he had one arm cast forward while the other one was back, and he was turning towards his left, looking at me and us. And then he turned back and he was gone. But he could not, some people say, well, he turned his head. This guy looked like he couldn't turn his head. He looked like a person with a stiff neck, kind of going, "Oh, okay, I'm going to look at you now," And but um, I don't want to. All we want to do is describe what we saw, to the best of our ability.
Mm.
We don't want to, we, we, we hope that anything that we say might be new and different to other people, but I don't think it is. I think that it's almost like the same story being repeated over and over by folks, except some of them are on the front porch of the house or peeking in the windows. And
I mean,
ours,
we do though. We do get. I mean, they're all kind of similar, but there are details that we pick up.
Mhm.
You know, from everybody, a slightly different thing,
Yeah.
a different event that happened, and you know, with the drawing Bigfoot, that they all look slightly different.
Mhm.
So I think there is, you know, value in every account, and I don't think they're all the same. I mean, I know they're all encounters, but I feel, you know, for me, everyone has a different aspect to it. What do you think, Jimmy?
Yeah, exactly. I, with all of that watery, odd looking um, movement that was by him when he came into our view, made me go, huh, maybe they do come up from a different place. Maybe that was a portal. We don't know what we're seeing out there. We don't know if there's such a thing as that for sure, because unless you walked up to one and stepped through it, how would you know? And but the orbs that we saw, that I totally said, no, 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 it's the moon. But when they moved around, and they only did this for a couple times, it wasn't like we were seeing these orbs every night and all this crazy stuff. I saw them. I thought it was the moon with tree branches in front of it. And then I remembered the moon didn't come from that direction. It always was out our southwest window where we could see it the best. And this was like out our bedroom window in a totally wrong place. And when they moved from three in a row, and I went three high with each other, and then one split off and became a fourth one underneath the three, that was too weird. And I don't know if they come from things like that. Everybody goes, oh, they come from these orbs, or you see these orbs and then you see a Bigfoot. I don't know that. All I know is that before this experience, I thought Bigfoot was a keeper of the earth, a walker of the earth that never was going to let you know he was there. But I didn't, I've never, I, I'm nervous about him now, but I never feared him back then.
Mm-hmm.
I've never been afraid of anything in my life. I lived in the wilderness. I lived there alone in the wilderness, 60 miles from the nearest town,
Yeah.
and I was never afraid going out in the forest, getting my own firewood, splitting it all, going out at night. And I did have experiences over there, but I didn't put it in my head that I had anything to fear, because fear is the worst thing you can fear.
Mm.
And so I've never been afraid of anything, but now I wouldn't want to have a flat tire on the edge of a dark road around here in the Oregon
Mm.
forest areas, because it it would just make me get too angst out.
Yeah.
And I don't want to go camping. I used to be a camper. I used to go out and forage for mushrooms and all of the things that you can do here. And now um, I have all my nerves squashed out of me, I guess, or squatched out of me.
Yeah.
And and
It's,
go ahead.
well, it's a sad. That's the sad side of it, isn't it? When
Yeah,
that love of going out is suddenly not enjoyable. Um, you know, what started to make you fear? What aspect? What have you looked into, or um, you know, when
I
you've had
I
so long of just living side by side with these things?
I think that it's not the fear necessary. I've never been afraid of bear or a coyote, or I mean I've been around a lot of wildlife in my life, and I don't think that it's me afraid of them so much as um, I got fooled when I was out in the forest, and I've never been fooled out in the forest. I've known all the time my surroundings. I've known my granddad taught me how to track when I was just a little kid up in the Gifford Pinchot Forest, and we knew bear tracks and everything. We were never afraid of the wilderness, and I was always aware of what was around me. I think the thing that stunned me the most about it was that I have been the guide to help my husband understand the forest and what things look like and how it works out there. And maybe it makes me feel like I had a bit of a failing for what was actually going on around me. And you can see now with all of the different videos and photos that people get, even if it's blob squatch, you can see how easily they can hide and you can't see them. And if you're not smelling them, you you have no idea that they're there. But maybe a person should keep their ears a little more keen. And in the old business that I was in, I was trained that because I was trained to spy on people that were doing fraud. And um, I was trained that if you hold your body still and don't move your eyes or your body, your eyes will pick up everything around you that is moving. And even I've always done that for years, and still there was this creature in the forest paralleling us, being curious about us. I believe it was only curiosity. I don't believe there was any malice whatsoever. I believe it was us coexisting and them curious about these. We were in their zoo, so to speak. They were curious about the humanoids that were always there. They could put us under the microscope, so to speak. And we had no idea. And it's kind of a hinky feeling.
Hmm.
Yeah, and I think a big part of that fear is the realization of knowing that they're real, whether it is friendly, not friendly, or whatever. Then you got a whole thing of things to think about in life as far as what is real. And then when you find footprints that just vanish, they just stop.
Yeah.
Or you find impossible breaks in trees. You
Mm-hmm.
find structures that humans can't do.
Mm-hmm.
There's so many things that add into the factors of the fear. And then it's one thing if all the stories that you hear are they're sweet and cuddly, tree hugging toad lickers, and they're just the greatest, nicest things out there. But when you have stories and tales from Native Americans that they're ripping
Mm-hmm.
people's heads off and piling up bodies, it
Yeah.
adds to the fear. If every account was just this nice soft thing that kind of winked at you and walked away type of thing, but it's
Mm-hmm.
not. It's not always the case. It's kind of like Carrie and other people say, treat them like you would a bear. Show them the respect or whatnot.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But yeah, there's several factors into the fear aspect, and a main one is how you realized that these were 100% real. Was it a
Mm-hmm.
scary encounter? Was it adding the puzzles together and knowing what it wasn't, and the only thing left was the impossible?
Yes. Yeah, I agree with that 100%. Um, you know, I I've never. I mean, I always have believed in the dinosaurs and everything. And mother brought up Bigfoot years and years ago. She called him Skookum, and and but she mostly stayed with the snowman, the Yeti type thing. And I think she did that to talk about it so she wouldn't scare my sister and I about them maybe being in the woods around where we lived or huckleberried or whatever. But you think back on all the Indian legends, and what was the Seven Devils really about? About the monsters that came over across the Snake River and stole the Indian children and ran with them across the Snake River into Idaho, and then coyote fixed them, so they were all trapped and couldn't move again. And now we got the Seven Devils Mountains. What if that was the idea, the same idea of Bigfoot snatching children, because there's so many legends about that type of thing too that you hear, now and again. And and the baskets and the different cave drawings and things like that all depict it. So it's just that I guess you don't expect to see it in the flesh, and you just want it to stay the myth and not the legend or something.
Right. When you were out there, did you ever notice any signs of them in and around hog activity?
Hog
Yeah.
activity? We
Yeah.
don't,
Like
like wild hogs.
yes.
We don't have wild hog here.
Okay.
We have deer. We
Deer.
found a lot of deer remains in this one area that wasn't really developed. And we got reports from different people that would come hiking through there that they saw a lot of deer remains and scattered and this and that. And we're like, oh yeah, well, it's a forest,
Yeah.
But my realistic brain was always, it had to be, a cougar taking them down. The cougar travel 80 to 120 miles for their territory. They're going to eat once and gorge themselves generally, at least around here. And what I have a biologist sister who says that that's about what they do, and they take off. And so when we were having kind of a little bit too much of that type of thing going on, it does make a person's mind wander about what's really happening. And it was peaceful living until we heard them around the house, and my husband said, okay, I've had enough of this. Those people just need to go home. They don't need to be in here behind our house getting this fruit and doing this and that. And that's when he went out and they took off over this fence, just like better than a deer. They were gone. And the crashing and banging was unbelievable, the breakage that was going on. And that's when I said, well, dude, I think I'd have you dog the deer for me, but I don't think I'd let you go hunting with me because it was so loud. He goes, that wasn't me. It was totally something different. So
makes you wonder, doesn't it?
Yeah.
How many other people are experiencing these things and just not even knowing it, and they're just there, like in plain sight, almost.
Yes, and exactly. And we thought with we haven't mentioned where it was because of the popularity of the place and what is and the good that it's there for, and it's there for all of us, and it's free, so we never want to bring any shadow across the place and scare anybody from being there. But if we just saw it, maybe other people have seen it but aren't going to say they saw it. Maybe they're like, well, we're just not going to go back there again because we think we saw something. Or they haven't seen anything because it took us 9 years to see something.
Now, when you were out there and you said that you had seen prints that just came and stopped, were they in the open? Were they in the wooded area? Did you have any thoughts on that, or what was your take on that?
My husband's still thinking that one over because he looked. That was another topic of this morning over coffee, that he found the trail that went to this pond that we didn't know. We didn't, in all 9 years, it was so covered with brush, we didn't see it. And it had been all just like tore up, and a path was put through there. And he decided, oh, where's this go? And he followed it down, and that's when he found the footprint in the mud at the pond. And that was the only one he found. He looked 40 direction this way, 40 directions, feet that way, and everywhere that he could look. And there was only the one footprint. It was like it just was there and went straight in the air, and it was gone. He did find a structure not that far away from there. Uh, it had to be done by something as large as a Bigfoot, because it was too large for, like, say, teenage guys or whatever to go down there and be lugging that stuff around. It would have taken them a week to do it. And so it was kind of tucked away. We have a lot of wild huckleberry up here and stuff, and buckbrush and so forth. And it was kind of, through some of that, and it was really not right out in the open for the general person to. My husband just happened to stumble upon it when he stumbled upon that footprint. So we weren't actually out, after the yelling and stuff that we heard. We weren't out scouting around looking for them. We were still in disbelief of questioning that anyway, even though we had, and I apologize for last week bringing up any other research names. So until we had gone to that person and found out about the footprint to be sure it was for real, we kind of just put it in the back of our brain that, that there was a possibility, but we hadn't, had any earth-shattering experiences right up in our face until we had it cross the road. And that was only about 500 yards from our front door. So it had been all around there, and coming out of our neighbor's field, it could just come up out of this canyon, which all this property butts up against other private forestries and butts up against the Moala and Clackamas River drainage areas, and then there's Mount Hood. So they call it the Bigfoot corridor through there. A lot of the folks do because they've written books about it and so forth. So when this happened, it seemed to make sense that they could be there, because this family from a neighboring town had been up the Clackamas River and actually discovered a full family of Bigfoot there. And the small ones were actually playing in the trees and bouncing them up and down and messing around in the trees. And that actually did get on the news over here. But, we still weren't. It was the farthest thing from our mind, I guess.
Yeah, it's incredible, isn't it? When when you were going out and about, what about structures? Did you ever see anything with the trees, with branches, glyphs, or anything like that?
We didn't see glyphs, but we could have seen glyphs, but we were too lame to put two and two together. We didn't know about glyphs at that time either. We hadn't didn't have any like cable. We weren't watching any of the shows about the Bigfoot stuff. We were having Air TV. I was out of the house, he worked, and we put all these hours in at this forest. And we weren't looking for that kind of thing. We weren't educated on any of that happening. Now we know about glyphs. We know about all of, the different construction that they do and making these things. And we did have some people in there that would come in. They asked permission to come in, and they were building shelters for survival and this and that. And when they were done, we tore them all down, pack it in, pack it out kind of thing. And we started noticing those were coming back, and they were bigger, filled with leaves, maple leaves. And I would make little sly comments like this hollow tree we had to go, look at this. It'd be a perfect place for Bigfoot to take a nap. But it wasn't because we had Bigfoot on our minds. and it wasn't big enough for that anyway, but we did find different structures. We did find the logs across the road, like, don't come here anymore. Now we know that what those signs were. Before it was just like, we didn't have wind today. How did that fall down? And why did it fall down? Why was it there? We pick up one, we come back, and there'd be another one across the road in the same place. And we had a lot of times we were sitting there at night, perfectly quiet, and kaboom, there'd be a tree come down, and there was no call. This is a managed healthy forest, very healthy. You go there, and after a rain, it smells like Christmas in there. It is a very pristine place. And I think, as I said, I think the only reason we started having like kind of an upheaval about stuff and maybe seeing them, I truly believe in my heart of hearts that it was the game camera that set them off, because they put game cameras in that one area. And I don't know why there wasn't an explanation from the owner, except perhaps to catch the bear on camera or something like that. But I just know that it seemed like when the camera went in that area, I and my camera were no longer welcome there. My little dog, border collie, wouldn't go with me anymore. She would shake and look out through the grating in the behind the seat and growl and be nervous and tug on me. Come on, let's go. And yet with all of the other folks and people going through there, the gibberish too is another thing that got to me. I was down there.
Do you think you were connected to the camera, to that trail cam? Do you think they connected you to it?
That's what I wonder, because I would push that camera until it made, I blew the camera out, pushing it.
Yeah.
And making the infrared on it show. And I'm just wondering who the heck knows? But that's just my way of thinking, because I'm the silly human. And I don't know if they put any, one and one together and that's what it was. I just know that after the game cameras went up is when it's kind of got a little bit chaotic in that one part of the area. And it was everything kind of went together. All the howling, where the howling came from, and where we saw the predator thing, and it was all kind of in the same general area. So it just makes sense to me that there was something going on there, where all of a sudden my husband was welcome as heck.
Yeah.
But I wasn't really, I didn't feel welcome there anymore. And he would kind of get upset with me because I'd say, I'm sorry, I got to go. I can't go any farther than this. And so he would finish doing what he had to do. And
he'd be rushing around as well, I guess.
Yeah. Buzz me back to the house, me and the dog were like, phew, we're glad to be back here, but
I've got some questions for you before we've got about another 7 minutes.
Okay.
We've got some questions for the chat. Guys, put your questions up in caps. While you're doing that, Kerry's going to be on No Such Thing podcast tonight at 7:30 Central. That'll be 8:30 Eastern with Cornell there. I'll put a link up. It's going to be on after Hidden Existence. So if everyone wants to pop over to Hidden Existence first, you don't have to, but I'm going to put a link in for No Such Thing podcast. Go and hit the like button or the reminder and go and check out and support Cornell's channel tonight. So question here was from Mega Mac. It says, what items, if any, on your property have gone missing, the taking of which she attributes to them?
What went missing?
I'm sorry. What items, if any, on your property have gone missing? Has anything ever gone missing?
That you think they're responsible for?
No, I don't think that anything went missing. I think only what I saw was the contribution of trinkets at the front step, and the plums that suddenly just disappeared.
Mm,
And I know that they can't, like, they don't have an apron to put them drop them all in, or a basket, but there was a lot of older plums there, and my husband went to get them after he had chased whatever was there out, and they were gone. So uh, that those are the only things that I can think of that actually went missing.
Maggie, have you or your husband looked into any of the local Native American lore or legends or interactions that may have happened in the past with Sasquatch in your area?
I I didn't. I only know the ones from where I was raised up in Washington, and some of the things that they had, uh, referrals and stuff there. But that was when I was much younger. But I haven't actually, sat down with any of. I have a lot of friends that would could probably tell me about that, though, that are um, Native American folks.
That might be an interesting avenue to go to, just for
mm,
your own sanity. You know,
Yeah. Yes. Exactly. Uh, they have been sighted all around that whole area. That was kind of up on a mountain in it, and there have been sightings kind of all around that whole area. So it kind of makes sense that they would maybe go through there. As far as staying the whole winter or anything like that, it's questionable whether they were there all the time or not, because I just feel like they had to follow the food.
yeah, I've heard that some tribes have even used to trade with them. And if that's the case, what else did they learn from each other? Did
Hmm.
the Native Americans learn to build the teepees, or were they taught
Yeah,
or vice versa? Did the Native
yeah,
Americans try to teach them how to make shelter or something? I imagine they've been around a lot longer, so who
yeah.
knows? That's just
But in this region, there wasn't the the leather teepees weren't actually so much an item here as they were on the plains. Here they strip the bark off of the cedar trees and made more of a wigwam type of thing towards the coastal Native Americans and stuff. There was a lot of use of bark and things like that more than the skins, because it's so darn wet here. They
right.
just become slimy and stuff. But yeah, I think that that's an interesting point, uh, too, and an interesting thing to think about for sure. I mean, with Mount St. Helens here so close, we were always very curious about that too. And I grew up around Mount Adams, and now they're saying, yeah, yeah, they're up here and everything. And my friends would go for hee hee on Mount Adams, which is Huckleberry Festival, and so forth. And you know, I don't know if I can pick their brains or not. Um, I I can't say.
Right.
it's definitely worth looking into that. We'll get one more question from the chat. Let me go back because it is moving a little bit quick. Um, have you noticed any? Is it in seasons? Lifetime Heart asks, are they more active in any particular season? Did you pick anything up like that? Or did you remember anything?
Yes, I think our season that we had the most activity in started in it started more in the spring, and it went through the summer months. And if the it seemed like, if to me, that year was a lighter winter. The first year we were there was a lighter winter. So the snow could, was on the ground when we had a lot of disruption there and questionable stuff going on. Like I said, it could have been the neighbor. We're not going to put it that it was the creature in our yard then, but we did start in April. Our sighting was in June, and the howling was before that, and then it was shortly after that that we left. We our gig was up and we were gone in about a year later. So or a few months later anyway that year. So I guess the howling did it in 17. The sighting was in 18, and that made the 9-year gig, and we were gone by that fall. So we don't know what's transpired since then. We haven't tried to find out. We haven't asked any questions or stirred any of the soup. We've kept it under our hat just for the goodness of what's happening there, and not wanted to make anybody unsettled about anything, because the folks that would come there a lot of times would go, "What, you got a cougar in here? Why haven't you told us you got a cougar in here?" Well, we don't have a cougar that lives in there like it's living in the zoo. It passes through, it might have some dinner there, and then it moves on. Oregon is a place where anybody that lives here, even in the towns now, should be aware that there are cougars that will come for dinner. There are owls that will come for your cats in the middle of the city. So there were owls there. There were pileated woodpeckers there, bobcats. Everything is there. So eyes and ears, folks, and that way you stay safe.
Definitely. Well, look, I really appreciate you coming back, and I think at some point we need to get you back on again, because there's still so much more to cover. I think, once you'd realise and all that. But thank you again, Maggie.
Yeah, and I'll be better prepared. I'm still, I'm trying to make it so you guys aren't rushed, trying to cover ground. This phone worked out really well. That might be a good thing, because I've now put all my notes onto the computer.
Okay.
And then I could, go back over my journals and see what happened when,
Yeah.
I mean,
well, we'll give you a bit of time to put that together if you want. We'll stay in touch anyway.
Sure. Anytime. If you guys need a slot filled, I can, I'd help you out. I'm getting better about not being nervous.
You've done great. We just need to get your husband now to get him on, and hopefully, I know he won't, but we can. Well, I'll definitely be in touch with you, Maggie. Jimmy, thank you so much for.
Absolutely, thanks for having me.
Yeah,
and welcome.
I hope that it helps people. I hope it made sense. I hate being scattered about stuff, but
there's so much to cover that you have to start somewhere, and that's why I have to make a point.
It helps if you pick my brain and kind of push me along, and then I go, "Oh yeah, this happened," and I don't want to put a big spooky, "Oh my God, this happened and it was creepy," because it was just an experience of life.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yes.
You guys,
it is what it is.
You guys take good care. Thank you very much for inviting me.
Thank you, Maggie. Thank you to everyone in the chat. Like I said, come and join us on Hidden Existence in about 5 minutes' time. And also at 7:30 Central, Kerry, this is me putting this in the chat now, not Kerry, but he's going to be on No Such Thing podcast with Cornell at 7:30 Central. Go and show them some support, Cornell some support. But until the next time, everyone, have a great night, and I'll see you all soon. Thanks, Jimmy.
You bet. Don't forget to hit that like button. Daniel does an amazing job, so hit that like button and share it. Share. Thanks, everybody. Thanks, everybody in the chat.
Thank you. Good night, everyone.